We are changing our planet. Extreme drought, extreme cold, extreme heat, extreme floods, wildfires. I mean, look at what's happening in Delhi.
Slow wind speed is degrading the situation in Delhi.
Is India's capital, Delhi.
Pollution crisis.
New Delhi.
New Delhi, New Delhi.
20 years ago, when I visited Goa and stayed at the Taj village, there was a beautiful beach adjacent to the village. Today, there is no beach.
What can we do? The viewers would like to know. Welcome, viewers, to another episode of BCubed, Breaking Boundaries with Sabeer Bhatia. Hello, Sabeer. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you.
And for this show on climate change, which is a matter of great concern for all of us, we have a special guest with us, Ramindra Bhavani. Ramindra, welcome to the show. Thank you. Ramindra is the founder of Eco Electronics and Buy Square Systems. He's a product of BITS Pilani and is an expert on sustainable technologies. Gentlemen, the most obvious first question would be, what exactly is climate change?
Simple way to describe climate change is there is a dramatic change in weather patterns the world over, globally. Either we are experiencing extreme drought, extreme cold, or extreme heat, or extreme floods, wildfires, and all of these weather events are caused by humans because of excessive consumption, excessive emission of greenhouse gases, which really means we are burning too much carbon, too much fossil fuels, and creating greenhouse gas effect, which causes a global increase in temperatures. And the simplest result of that is that weather patterns around the world are changing dramatically.
So what can we do? I mean, the viewers would like to know, what can we do to reduce the effects of excessive carbon consumption?
Yeah, I'll take the first answer, and then of course Ramindra can add to this. First thing is reduce our consumption, if we can, in whichever way we can. So if we are, for example, driving a four-door, four-passenger car to work, if we can carpool, we automatically reduce our carbon footprint. If we walk more, bicycle to work more, we reduce our carbon footprint. When we are not home, turn off the lights, turn off the air conditioning, we reduce our carbon footprint. Buy eco-friendly products, that consume as little power as possible. That directly leads to, reduction of carbon emissions. Simple things like this that we can incorporate in our day-to-day lives, and then of course encourage, not just do that ourselves, but encourage our friends to do the same thing, encourage our local governments and cities to create more eco-friendly avenues for us. For example, more bicycle path lanes, more public transportation if we can. Take the metro if you can, rather than drive in your own car. In my mind, these are simple steps we can do to reduce our carbon footprint.
So, as Sabeer is saying, it's primarily a change in our habits, change in the way we consume. That's the primary and the largest driver that would affect global warming, or that will improve the amount of warming in the planet. Now, a few extra examples. For example, if you need to use air conditioning and you continue to use air conditioning because the environment is very hot, the temperatures are very hot, and you can't really survive without air conditioning. The simple thing that you can do is wear light clothes and just increase the temperature that you've set slightly, right? So if you're used to setting a temperature of 22 degrees, you can go to a slightly higher temperature of 24, 25 degrees, which is equally comfortable. You don't have to wear a jacket when you're sitting inside and using air conditioning. When you're sleeping, you don't have to actually use a quilt, you can just use a thin sheet. These few things actually dramatically reduce the power consumption. And reduction in power consumption automatically means that the infrastructure which is producing power has to produce lesser amount of power. So that's an example of just a slight change in our habits which can do that. Similarly, when you're heating, you can accordingly adjust the temperature and not make it so warm, you can make it less warm. And the other interventions that can come in terms of reducing your environmental footprint is to see what all areas that you're consuming energy or you're consuming from the environment can we try and reduce, like some of the examples Sabeer gave, that if you can carpool and you need to travel to work, if you can carpool, it will reduce the amount of energy that you're consuming, and hence overall increase the amount of energy available and less amount to be produced, and hence reduce the impact of temperature rise.
So what you're saying is that, you know, small little contributions, using the common sense, implementing baby steps can lead to very large savings of in energy consumption. So, and otherwise, what would be the economic implications?
Oh, huge.
You know, we talk about smog, wildfires and all that. I mean, so many other things, Sabeer, that I've heard you talk about earlier.
We are changing our planet and leaving it worse for our children and grandchildren. I'll give you some practical things that are happening. You know, if you look at the Indo-Tibetan glacier plateau, glacier system, that supplies water, which is essential for life, to more than half of the world's population, all of China, all of India, all of Asia. And the glacial, that glacier is melting really fast. This is causing a rise in global sea levels. I'll give you a practical result of changing global weather patterns or rising sea levels. 20 years ago, when I visited Goa and stayed at the Taj village, there was a beautiful beach adjacent to the village. Today, there is no beach. There is a wall because sea levels have risen so much. That is one example. And you know, we see I live in California, there are numerous wildfires every year, burning tens of thousands of acres, resulting in the loss of biodiversity, loss of plant life, loss of animal life. The bears that live in California are moving back, you know, further and deeper into forests. Same thing is happening here. Just in this neighborhood, why are leopards coming to human population? Because we are taking away their homes by deforesting the planet. These are all things that in a nutshell mean that we are leaving the planet worse off for our children and our grandchildren. And we have to stop doing that.
Biodiversity impact.
Yes.
Therefore.
Yes.
Would you like to touch upon it?
There is loss of plant life, loss of animal life, reduction in the number of species that we have on planet Earth. Many species are vanishing just because we are deforesting the planet for our fuel consumption. And like I said, you know, this upsets the ecological balance that nature intended the planet to have. You know, it no longer exists, and obviously it can't be better if there is a reduction in species and the reduction of arable land, which farmers can use for cultivation and production of crops and food. So one is, you look at the short-term effects. Short-term, we may be consuming more energy, we may be developing more rapidly, but in the long run, we are causing more harm than good.
I've often heard that, the climate change impact would be truly felt in its most disastrous, dimensions, about 100,000 million years ahead. But what I get to see now is something very different. We are feeling it on a year on year basis. We are actually feeling the impact of climate change. So obviously there is dire need here for spreading the word, for everybody actually understanding what we are doing and what we must not do to prevent this damage. Would you agree with me?
2021 was a banner year to the start of the decade. The number of natural nature disastrous events far exceeded anything that we had seen in any of the prior decades. This tells you that this change will not happen 100 years or 1,000 years from now. It is happening now. And we are actually feeling its effects almost on a daily or monthly basis. I mean, look at what's happening in Delhi. The smog levels, the pollution levels are 20 times worse than what is considered healthy. I think that is a direct relation, that has a direct correlation with excessive, use of natural resources. And so this is in our face. We are staring at this problem now. It is not a problem of the future, in my humble opinion.
Just like the Indo-Tibetan glaciers, which supply water to most of the world, and the melting of that part of the ecosystem. What do you think of that?
Absolutely. I mean, if that glacial system completely melts and turns to water, none of us in these countries will have water. We rely on freshwater systems for life. And the same thing is happening in places like Greenland, where massive glacial pieces are just melting away, and they keep most of northern Europe warm because of the international water currents that supply warm water to the shores of the European countries, even in the winter. And if we get rid of these glacial systems and if the sea levels start rising again, those countries will be in the ice ages again.
So could we have a little more on greenhouse emissions?
So there are multiple houses which can be classified as greenhouse gases. It's basically gases which can contain carbon as an element as a part of its composition. Carbon dioxide is the basic one, which is the largest contributor. That's what everyone really talks about. But there are other contributors like methane, a lot of the natural gases. Methane is produced not only naturally, which is also used as a fuel as a part of, which could be used for heating and for various other applications. But methane is also produced by animal stock. In terms of trying to reduce the environmental footprint, I think the basic rule that one needs to really apply is that assess how much do I really need to consume. For example, food. There is a lot of wastage of food, right? If you reduce the amount of wastage of food, you will help, you will contribute towards the reduction in these greenhouse gases. If you reduce the level of consumption of meats globally, for example, if meat is necessary, you don't need to consume it all 3 times a day. You can consume it twice, or you can have a healthy mix of meats and vegetables or salads and fruits, which anyway is much healthier for as a part of our food habits in any case, right? So these are things which will actually contribute quite a bit in terms of the reduction in the greenhouse gas.
In fact, if I may add one thing to that, I read somewhere that the largest source of greenhouse emissions, methane, is animal husbandry.
Yeah.
Is livestock is that we raise for food consumption. to put in our food supply. So if theoretically the whole world started turned vegetarian, we could have a dramatic effect in the reduction of greenhouse gases.
Yes.
Dramatic. I mean, we could almost reverse climate change effects. That is how apparently 1 pound of beef can feed, like, equivalent of 60 people, some ridiculous number like that. So you're very right. Methane, which is 20 times worse than carbon dioxide, the primary source of methane pollution is animals raised for food. So if we stop eating meat, we can reverse the effects of climate change. Believe it or not, it's as simple as that.
I've been reading about something called greenwashing. What is greenwashing?
This is the first time I've heard of greenwashing, but I think it's a term coined by the politicians to make themselves feel good about each other. I don't know really.
Even I haven't heard of it, yeah.
So, okay, now one of the most important aspects of containing this climate change and its adverse effects is a lot of consensus that should build across the world at different levels of engagement. One level of engagement is a people level of engagement. So where all the people are aware, democratically aware of what they need to do or what they must not do to make the world more livable in times to come. Second level is that there are NGOs and agencies and other organizations at work. And the most important level is the multilateral bodies like the UN and various other bodies, governments, and consensus between governments and intergovernmental engagement to actually be able to drive the agenda. Would you like to say something about this?
I would. I mean, I come from the US where half the country doesn't even believe that this is real, that climate change is real. They think it's just part of the natural climate change of the earth, of the planet itself. And there is some, their argument is there have been 4 ice ages before the next one. And it's not that what caused those ice ages. Was it overconsumption by humans then? Or is it just a natural, way of the planet warming itself and going into an ice age and then once again coming out of it and then once again, starting life from scratch again? So there is that body of thought, obviously, that says that this is just part of nature. Global warming is not man-made. It's not caused by human consumption. It is purely. Having said that, okay, let's assume that that is true. It still behooves us to, like I said, our underlying driving force should be that we cannot leave the planet worse off for our children and grandchildren. We are part of a cosmos. We are born, we die one day, but the cosmos will go on. It's been around for billions of years. And so we have to still reduce our consumption, because destroying nature by deforesting, for example, if you look at what is known as the lungs of the earth, it's the rainforests in Brazil, massive, that literally provide oxygen to all of planet. It is being rapidly deforested, either for agricultural purposes or for commercial gain, wood and logging. These are things, when you look at a macro level, I think we should as a species avoid doing. Whether we tie it into the climate change debate or do it naturally, I mean, that's open for discussion, really. But to answer your question in a nutshell, all of us have to agree, whether it's governments, it's individuals, it's societies, that we will consume less and we will leave the planet better off for our children and grandchildren.
So there is a fact that climate is changing faster than humans, animals and plants can adapt themselves to. So essentially the speed of adaptation on the one side and the speed of climate change. The speed of adaptation has to be swifter than the speed of climate change. that is the only way to defeat it. And for that, there are obviously, there is spreading the awareness and people actually embarking upon actionable agenda.
So, you're right. As I had talked about earlier as well, the changes that we need to make obviously need to be driven by the grassroots. That's the consumers or the people. They also have to be aided by policies from the government and researchers and NGOs and scientists. Essentially, I think what we really need to do is change some of our habits which have sort of, I would say, deteriorated because of availability or free availability or easy availability of newer technologies. So, I mean, if you look at trends and see how policies and people are actually reversing those trends naturally. For example, if you recall, 40 years ago, we hardly consumed polythene and plastic bags, right? There was everybody who would need to go out shopping would actually take a cloth bag, would go buy vegetables, and that bag would be emptied out at home, and you would transfer the vegetables wherever you need to do, or whatever meat or whatever produce that you purchase, right? Today, with every single item that you purchase, you get a plastic packet which is actually a waste, right? And it goes into the landfills, and that's a material that doesn't get destroyed. But if you now see what is happening in the last about 5 to 10 years, there is a trend of people insisting that you reduce your consumption of plastic bags, right? And what is the solution? The same old solution that we adopted earlier. The same thing is you have parties, you have dinners, you use disposable plates, right? There are newer companies which are coming up which are adopting a very old system which existed in India, for example, for a long time. There is a pattal, right, in which food was served, which is made of leaves. There is a German company which is actually making plates which is made of that, right? Spoons are being made of wood for disposable items, right? So, these are things where some of the things which have existed naturally to us or have been used naturally by the globe got distorted somewhere. So, technologies are useful, but those technologies have to be used appropriately, correctly, and to the minimum extent possible to improve our lives. Not just that something is available, so you should actually keep consuming it more. One of the initiatives that India has started recently, for example, is promotion of millets. Millets in general are much healthier option than consuming wheat, for example, right? Here's of a lot of cases where people have this gluten allergies, right? That's comes from wheat. So, for example, if you do not consume wheat and you consume millets, you will not be affected by those things. Now, wheat and rice take a much higher amount of water to produce. Millets consume almost no water. So, you can actually have a whole season of millet production with just 2 rains. These were natural crops that existed. So, just try and adopt back to some of the old systems that existed. One is destroying our soil because we use a lot of fertilizers. The natural fertilizers always existed, right, which is manure. So, I think we just need to go closer to the nature. The nature itself has the solutions. The best air conditioner is is trees and plants, right? So, I mean, if you look at this environment, right, it's full of trees and it feels so comfortable. You don't really need heating or air conditioning, even though we are sitting in winters, right? So, I think once we go closer to the nature, the solutions will automatically be formed.
I think there is a connection between climate change, overconsumption, and human health.
Yeah.
Because we overconsume, we are getting sicker as well.
Coming to that, yes.
You know, so No, when we take care of ourselves by consuming less, working out more, exercising, bicycling, walking instead of driving, turning off the lights, consuming less, living in smaller homes, not only are we healthier, physically, we are happier mentally, and we are contributing to, reduction of greenhouse gases, and preventing the rapid decline of climate change.
Sabeer, exactly a year ago, you did something quite phenomenal, which I would like to touch upon here. You organized the cycle run in central Delhi, in Delhi Vista, called the Carbon Shunya cycling event, in which some very eminent people were present. And you took the cycle rally right across the New Delhi, and it was covered very well. It was really appreciated. There are 2 points that came out from that. One is reduction of emissions, and the other is to preserve good health. Both the points that you're talking about. You certainly deserve a lot of credit for that.
No, thank you so much for your kind words.
On a different note. So when we talk about climate change, the one thing that we invariably must touch upon is renewable sources of energy, and how to progress more towards that regime. That's one. Now there is a little anecdote that comes to my mind. I saw this in some comic strip, or maybe in one of these cartoons, for children. There is this spacecraft with 2 aliens. It's zipping past the Earth. The Earth is a beautiful green globe with some spots, a little bit of blue thrown in. Looks lovely. So these guys are in a hurry to get somewhere, and they say, "This is a beautiful planet. Let's see this." So the other chap says, "No, we are in a hurry to accomplish a mission. On the way back, we'll check it out." Then they come back. When they come back, they keep looking for it. They don't find it. They find in its place a white, sandy colored planet. And then they do some research and say, "Oh my God, what happened to it?" Humans took over. So on that note, the importance of preventing environment degradation and
renewable sources. We need to
renewable
talk about that.
sources.
Yes.
And so renewable sources, yes, you might like to
Yes,
talk about
yes.
that.
Listen, one is of course emission of methane from animal husbandry, livestock that we raise for food consumption. The other is coal-fired plants, like we have in Delhi or most of the developing world. We absolutely have to stop even a single additional coal-based electricity producing plant on planet Earth. Simply, that is a no-no. I think there are a number of alternatives. Hydro is a phenomenal alternative because we have natural sources of rivers that just keep flowing. You can build a dam and a hydro source. Nuclear is another, and there is a concerted effort the world over to mitigate some of the disastrous effects of fuel, spent fuel storage in nuclear power plants. I know there is a friend of mine who's working on a smaller size nuclear plant that will have no spent fuel issues. It can recycle the spent fuel and use it again for producing electricity. And this is a much smaller, more easily contained nuclear plant, so that we don't ever have a Chernobyl-like disaster ever again. So I think a lot of even Bill Gates has funded a couple of companies. I think in the next decade we will see the emergence of smaller, much safer nuclear-powered plants which can completely eliminate our dependence on coal, and that will make for a better planet, hopefully.
So once again, aggregation of thought.
Yeah, if you may, I'd like to just add a little bit more on that. So there are a lot of technologies in terms of renewables. For example, even in the case of hydropower, you can build dams and create large hydropower plants which will generate electricity, but they also tend to harm the environment in terms of flooding very large biodiversity, right? They do affect fish life on the river, right? There are some other solutions which also exist in the hydel space. For example, run of the flow mini and micro hydel plants, right, which don't really disrupt the flow or sort of divert the flow, and the water sort of rejoins, right. These are simple solutions, simple interventions which provide localized energy production, right. So, since there is a grid which exists in most of the countries, these can consume energy in an island, and then they can also feed back to the grid. Similarly, for solar, today solar is the cheapest energy source that exists. The technology has improved so much that in the last about 20 years, the price has come down to about 1/20th of what it was for setting up a solar power plant, right. So, the cost of solar panels is very, very low, and in areas where we are blessed with a very large tropical climate, which is actually where bulk of the humans reside, right. So, that is an area which is very, very rich for the production of solar. Here also one can look at a very large number of micro grids, which is communities having pooled solar or having solar on your rooftop with a slight amount of storage, which can actually become self contained units of power generation and consumption, right. So, if we can start moving towards solutions where you generate the power that you need, and especially because in the developing world there are a lot of people who live in independent houses. People do not necessarily live in multi-storied apartments, right. There is a very large population of people who live in multi-storied apartments, but I think majority of the global population live in independent houses or smaller houses, right. Each of them can generate enough power that they themselves need to consume, or a community needs to consume, right. And these can be completely self-sustained if the devices that we use, or if the products that we use for consumption can reduce the amount of energy that they consume.
Wonderful, Ramin. That was very, very elaborately put, and I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of that kind of aggregation. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show. You are most welcome to ask questions should you wish. All you need to do is download the Showreel app from App Store or Play Store. Put your questions on that, and the gentleman will be more than happy to answer. Thank you, Sabeer. Thank you, man.